Good evening, everyone. The meeting is called to order. Our meeting is occurring in person tonight at Lebanon Middle School, and the Zoom connection is available as a convenience. People will be able to use the Zoom to make public comment and to watch the meeting, which will also be available on CATV within a day or two. The agenda is posted on the SAU website, and on the first page of the agenda are instructions on how to access the Zoom meeting and phone numbers and email addresses to use should you encounter any problems. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Anyone who is joining us via Zoom, please mute yourself. We're getting some background noise here in the meeting. So if you're attending via Zoom, please mute your microphone. We will be having public comment tonight during the public comment period, and as always, it is governed by policy BEDH. Are there any additions or deletions from the agenda, Joanne?
None.
Okay, the meeting is now open for public comment. If there is anyone in person or via Zoom that would like to bring anything up to the board, comment, please do that. Please identify yourself by name and by the ward in which you reside, and limit your time to 3 minutes, please.
I do not see anyone coming in public, and I do not see any hands raised in by Zoom.
All right. Hearing and seeing no hands raised or anyone here present, public comment is closed. MJ, would you please make a motion to put us into non-public session under, I'm sorry? I don't know, I haven't seen him.
Well, we're supposed to be with him at that meeting. Can't go in without.
Okay, we won't go into non-public quite yet. Correspondence. Is there any, did we receive any correspondence since the last meeting?
None that I know of.
No correspondence. Let's then proceed then with the first part of the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the public minutes from March 23rd, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the public minutes from March 23rd, 2022.
I'll second that.
A motion for NJ, second by Stephen. Are there any corrections or questions? MJ?
So I don't think under 10G, I was the one that made the motion to waive the first readings of the policies. I think that was probably Kristen that actually did that.
I think you're right.
Okay, if that's agreeable to Kristen, we'll make that change.
I think so, as far as I remember.
Any other corrections? Okay, could we have a vote? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yes, no, and 1 abstention from me. We now need a motion to approve the non-public, are there non-public minutes?
No.
No. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to jump down, if it's all right, if I hearing no objection to doing this student report now, please. Miles, you want to tell us what's going on? Thank you. Thanks, Miles. Is there any questions for Miles?
How many people are on council? How many students?
At Lebanon, it's currently 20, but a few meetings ago, we voted to add one more seat for next year, and that will be a seat that is for students who did not attend the district in past years, so that, because they didn't know anyone who's really who's in the school, so it gives them more. So it's 5 per grade, and now it's going to be the one for people new to the district.
Thank you.
Miles, I wasn't at the last meeting, so I'm not sure what you reported on, but did you talk about the Model UN trip? Because I
Yes.
saw some photos from that on the
Yes, it was
website.
very successful, and LHS represented Bahrain and Chile, and yeah, it was a great time. I went on it, and it was a really good experience.
Anything else for Miles? Thanks very much. Yeah. Right now, MJ, if you would please make a motion to put us in non-public under C.
Make a motion to enter non-public under New Hampshire RSA 91A 32C.
Miles, that was? I'm sorry, what was that?
And LHS represented Bahrain and Chile.
Is there a second? Second by Stephen. We'll have a roll call, starting with Mary.
Yes, Mary.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. We're picking up item,
Recording in progress.
we'll pick up with item 6B on the agenda, nominations and acknowledge resignations. It's in your packet. May I have a motion, please, for the board to to acknowledge the resignations listed on the spreadsheet dated April 6th and approve the nominations, please.
I make a motion to approve the nominations and resignations dated April 6, 2022.
Motion by
I'll
Stevens,
second.
second by MJ. Are there any questions? MJ?
I guess, can we just have maybe some quick background information on the principal? Because I don't really know much where she's coming from, what
Yeah.
the process went.
So Colleen is an associate principal at Mascoma High School. She has taught high school and middle school students. Her background is in teaching Spanish. She was described by her references as student-centered, thoughtful, organized, and a strong communicator. She came and visited the middle school last week. She met with students, staff, and then we had a meet and greet in the afternoon. Afterwards, she just said how excited she was to come and be part of the Lebanon School District, and we're really excited to have her join our team.
I was the board rep on the interview committee as well, and it was like our usual committees. I think there were 14 of us around the table. Heavy representation from the middle school, and she presented very well. She interacted with the committee members well. I also attended the meeting she had here with parents and other interested parties a couple days later, and it was a small group, but she managed that really well. She struck me as as a highly experienced and I think level-headed person. Any other questions? Yes, Kristen.
Just a quick question, because there's a few resignations for positions. I'm just asking, are they currently being searched for? Like the grade 3, grade 2, and the math teacher at LHS?
Yes, as soon as a person puts in their resignation, we follow the process, and the principal puts in the form to Xavier to post it. So that process turnaround is pretty fast. Tim, it's just like a couple of days or something like that. I mean, you oversee that.
Yeah, I'd say, within a day or two. Right. We put ads in the paper every Tuesday, I think, but it goes up on School Spring within probably a day.
I was actually just looking at the employment page a couple days ago on the website, and I noticed that these positions are all posted there, as well as the summer school positions and the subs that we're looking for. So we're out there. Anything else? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Unanimous.
I'm going to call over there.
Okay.
And if you could talk to Karen.
Sure. We're going to, we were due next to have the presentation by Dale Mwano on the equity survey. He had to be put on hold while we had our non-public, so while Joanne gets him back connected with us, let's move on to Karen's piece on the discussion and action on the Verrill Supreme Court brief.
Hi. I think this is in your packet. It's, there's some talking points that were presented by Jerry Zellen from Drummond, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to tell you what the situation is about, because groups of directors and other school personnel are looking for people to contribute to the legal briefs that he would like to present as a friend of the court. So a little bit of history is that New Hampshire is extending eligibility for special education for another year for students, so that they'll be able to be part of the special ed programs up until their 22nd birthday, and that should be taking effect in July of 23. So keeping that in mind as potential impact on some of our budgets, we also have this conflict somewhat between the Department of Health and Human Services and people in education, especially special education folks. And what's happening is that Health and Human Services is interpreting a revised statute annotated RSA 171A as they have no need to support our students after age 18 in terms of any kind of residential support that they may need, regardless of how significant their disabilities are. And this surfaced with Vero versus New Hampshire DHHS. It's a student who is saying that even though there's an IEP in the situation, she's still entitled to support from the state based on her significant developmental disability. So what Jerry Zellen is proposing is to be a friend of the court and to present a perspective that may not be readily available from DHHS or even from the advocates for folks with significant disabilities. Trying to see if there's anything else. There are a lot of layers to it. I'm happy to answer any questions that might clarify from your perspective what this might mean to our budgets and to our students, actually. There's supposed to be an interagency agreement in every state per IDEA, and New Hampshire's interagency agreement is not quite as solid as it is in a lot of other states. So there should be an interagency agreement whereby the agencies that work with these students get together and figure out services plans for them, but we don't have that here. And one of the things that happens is that parents get really worried, and legitimately so, and as their kids get older, they start pressing for residential placements for their kids through special education. And it's very understandable, and these kids need protection as well, and it's supposed to be coming from the Department of Health and Human Services. Yes, sir.
Can you explain the potential financial impact for us as a school district?
As a school district, if residential placements are legislated to be the responsibility of schools, they can run anywhere from $80,000 to $200,000, $300,000, depending on what kind of placements they are.
And that continues beyond the age, the school age?
Well, for us, it would continue till the student was 22, but it could go from 18 to 22.
And right now, our kids, our obligation, the district is paying this now for kids who are 18, up to 18, right?
Up to 18, it depends on the situation. Residential placement is actually very rare, and it's developed over, the decision is made over a matter of time, and after trying all kinds of things with a student that would be considered less restrictive than a residential placement, and it has to be for educational reasons. And what is happening now is a push for it to be regardless of the reason. They want education to take responsibility beyond anything that costs. Right now, there's a $36,000 limit, and then the state picks up the rest, but they want it to be all education.
Well, some of these placements are court-ordered, right?
Beg your pardon,
Some
yes,
of these
the
placements are court-ordered,
they
yeah.
are court-ordered, and then DHHS pays for the majority of those placements, yes. So we have a couple kids in those situations, but it's not the preponderance of placements. Residential is fairly rare through education.
So is it reasonable then, and let me ask Tim as well, that basically what we would be looking at is continuing the support that we provide past the age of 18 if the state does not step in?
I'm not a board member, but please indulge my question as I try to understand this. So if we have a child who's 20 years old and is in, this is hypothetical, is in a residential placement, right now we would budget for what the cap, right?
To the cap, that's correct. If it's a court-ordered placement,
and the state picks up the rest?
Yes,
So under this rule, there would be no cap and we would pick up the whole thing?
that is correct.
So, so a $300,000 placement, we would budget, and we have had some children that have been over 18 that we've already budgeted for in the budget during our discussions.
Right.
So we'd budget roughly $50,000, call it them easy numbers. But if this rule goes through or law, whatever it is, we would have to budget the full cost of the residential placement in those cases, which are not very many, but there are some, and it could be triple the cost we budget
It could
now.
be very expensive, yes,
Right.
yes. And DHHS is supposed to be providing all kinds of residential supports. It could be a group home, it could be a therapeutic foster home, it could be a specialty placement, and the student would have access, say, to a day program for intensive needs, which is what they need, and their educational needs are being met there. And the residential piece is more of a family situation, not an educational situation. And they're trying to encompass all of it. So what Jerry was asking for, what Mr. Zellen is asking for, is a contribution towards the legal work that he's going to be doing, and that most school districts are contributing between $500 and $1,000. So that was one of the requests that I was coming with you today, is to consider this and to see if it was something that you would like to support to help defray the costs, which is not a full bill, by the way.
Right. Did Jerry Zellen indicate how many other districts have signed on already?
Right now, we've got Guilford and Exeter, and together they're contributing $11,000. And if the aggregate pledge from everyone exceeds the cost, he'll reimburse proportionately to the folks who contributed. The directors at the meeting that I attended last week are all going to their boards to see if they can get some more support for this. So that's why I'm here.
I don't know how the board feels. It seems like a no-brainer to me.
$1,000 or $200,000.
Yeah. Does someone want to make a motion?
I'm sorry, just
Yeah, go ahead.
one quick thing. The case that's in front of the court again was actually awarded positively that the student should get support through DHHS, but DHHS is appealing that decision.
Right.
So that's what this is about. I
Thank
left
you.
that out.
Thanks
Sorry.
for that clarification.
I guess is there, make the motion, then we discuss the amount that we want to contribute?
Yeah, let's get a motion on the table. Well, if you want to include a dollar amount in the motion, that would be efficient.
Well, I guess I'd have to look to Tim, I don't know what he has in his slush account to contribute to.
We don't use the word
I don't have
slush.
a slush account, so the answer to that is 0.
He got very close to the microphone for that.
No slush account.
But
Yeah, if you have a bake sale,
that's a dessert treat.
500 or 1,000, neither one are a struggle. So
they are a
they
struggle.
are not. Either one.
I just want to get the, I guess I'll make a motion to contribute legal expenses to be a friend of the court in the Verrill Supreme Court case brief in the amount of $1,000.
Second by Stephen. Discussion?
Yes. No, I think it is clear that, like Renee says, it seems like this is something that is in our best interest, and also in the interest of the children, which is more important. So, yeah, I think we should support it.
Yeah, and I just had a quick question. Are the individual districts going to be named as part of the friend of
Yes,
the court
they-
on the letter or something
Yes, their
like that?
names will be on the list. Even if they're not contributing, if they support what they're doing, he would like to add them to the list. So yes, the name will be on the list.
Hearing no further discussion, we'll call the question. All in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, now we're going to go back. Deo Mwano is now available to us, and he's going to make a presentation on the equity survey.
Joanne, can we put him on the screen, or is that not possible?
I'm calling, he's not feeling well. I called him outside. I don't see him on here as a panelist, so
Oh,
it's going to be hard to connect.
I thought he was there. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I called him in.
Well, we can keep going.
Hi, sorry to bother you, Dale. I don't see you on as a panelist in the Zoom, so I can't have you be the host and do your presentation.
Well, Joanne is doing that. Item 8C, Board Committee and School Assignments, those have already been sent out. And I know everyone has that information. If there are any issues or conflicts with that, please let me know, and I'll do my best to resolve it.
Maybe we could do like next committee dates, like finish the end stuff first, maybe?
Yep. Yep, we'll keep on, we'll
Oh,
keep,
I see him.
oh, he's back, he's there.
Great, thank you.
Yes, we can hear you, and I'm going to make you the host. And I thank you for being here. I know you're feeling a bit under the weather, so we'll keep the conversation moving right along. And Deo, once you become the host, I can see you up here on the screen. Trying to make you be like a full screen. Would you be able to put your presentation up so that it gets shown? Cable TV people, do you know how to assist with that?
I have no idea how to, I don't know how to get on that screen. That was part of our responsibilities.
We do have, just so we know, we do have it right in front of us, so we don't, and there it is on the screen.
But not up
Perfect.
here.
On your screen.
Oh, it's on there. But it will be filmed for CATV reasons off of this.
Yes, we are it.
That to me is the most important thing. I appreciate that. Okay, good evening, Deo. Once again, thank you for being here this evening, and I will hand it over to you.
Great, thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Good evening, everyone. I am going to be giving you a presentation of the data that we consolidated after the work that we did with the surveys, the interviews. And so what I'm going to be sharing with you is the consolidated data. I'm sure that you all received a copy of this, and you also received a copy of the individual survey results for each stakeholders that we surveyed. I'm going to try to go a little bit slow just to make sure that what I'm saying makes sense to you all, and I apologize if I seem a little bit abrupt. I have a kind of a bad headache. But anyways, so let me see here. All right, so great. So just to give a little bit of a background, the work that I did, my team and I did, with the timeline of the work was between October and March. And when we started off in October 1st, we opened it up to the community so we can interview them. And what we learned from the different folks we interviewed informed the type of questions that we put in place for the survey. So the methodology in which we used to gather this information was survey that's hosted by SurveyMonkey, the preliminary listening sessions that we did prior to the survey going out, but also some of the individual interviews that we hosted with different community members. Okay, so in terms of the aggregative data, over 1,298 participants were involved in completing the survey, and the breakdown is listed below. So high school, 7th to 8th, 4th to 6th, district employees, and also parents. So we took all that number and rolled it up to the number of folks that actually participated. So I'm going to kind of go through some of the key findings. Again, the key findings are coming out of the individual stakeholder surveys that we were able to compile in order to kind of bring it up at an aggregative way. So just wanted to make sure that I'm providing that context to you. So I'm going to start off where there were, areas to celebrate. So when it came to folks feeling a sense of pride by being part of the Lebanon School District, 94% of staff members stated that they felt a sense of pride 93% of high school students stated that they felt a sense of pride. 80% of 7th and 8th graders, and then 94% of students that are in 4th and 6th grade. And then with the parents, it was 92%. So just wanted to start off by just highlighting some of those. That's a good thing that people feel a sense of pride being part of your district. So in terms of the way that the questions were set up, we broke the questions down into 3 categories: diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm not going to sit here and provide all the definition, but we wanted to make sure that people had an understanding in what context we said when we say diversity, to make sure that the holistic aspect of diversity was presented, not just, whatever definitions people might have restricted what diversity is. So I'm going to start off with some of the information that we gathered in regards to diversity. 92% of staff members and students, they see the value of having diversity at their school. 92% of 7th and 8th grade agree or strongly agree in the value of having diversity at their school. So the key points that you're seeing on top, that's kind of the umbrella collected data, and then the examples are specific based on the stakeholders that completed the survey. 89% of 4th and 6th graders agree or strongly agree that their uniqueness is supported in their school. 89% of parents, families indicated that they're comfortable talking about issues concerning the identity of their students. And then when we talk about equity, equity is about how our folks in your community are utilizing the resources that are there for students, family, teachers, staff to excel. So part of that is about identifying realized potential and unrealized potential and making sure that it's done in an equitable way. So from the umbrella data that we gathered, looking through all the stakeholder survey results, students feel respected by school staff members and teachers. Students are given support from teachers to achieve learning success. And I'm going to provide some data to support that statement. 93% of high school students agree or strongly agree that they have support from their teachers to achieve learning success. 83% of 7th and 8th graders agree or strongly agree that grades are distributed equitably. 92% of employees say that they are treated fairly. 91% of employees agree or strongly agree they feel acknowledged by the students for their work. I wanted to kind of show you here, in all of the individual stakeholder data that we provided, there's a link for each of the actual survey dashboard. So I want to show you what it actually looked like if you had a chance to actually click on the dashboard in order to see where we pulled the information from. For example, in this question, this came out of the high school survey. I'm given support from my teachers to achieve learning success, and you can see how it's distributed across. So I just wanted to give some context here. So as you're seeing what I've compiled, that you see where it actually came from. Last but not least, under the category of inclusion, inclusion is about creating a space where it's a collaborative atmosphere where people feel a sense of belonging regardless of the unique differences and perspectives that they have and that they carry, that it's making sure that it's valued regardless of who they are and their representation within the broader community. Inclusion. The umbrella statement, after analyzing all the data, students and staff feel respected and they feel a sense of belonging to the community at the school. Belonging was a big part of inclusion. 92% of 4th and 6th graders agree and strongly agree that they feel respected by the school staff and teachers. 76% of high school students agree or strongly agree they feel a sense of belonging at their school. 74% of district employees agree or strongly agree that the leadership team will listen to them and bring positive changes. 92% of parents and families agree or strongly agree that they feel respected by the school staff and teachers. So those are kind of the information that we gathered throughout all the different surveys that we wanted to highlight in terms of areas of areas to celebrate and areas to really providing you all an opportunity to figure out, okay, what are the different moving parts that contribute to this so you can all continue to maintain this positive result in terms of how people see themselves. And then again, here's another example of where some of those data came from the actual individual dashboard. This was for 4th and 6th graders, where this question said, I feel respected. You can see how the data is broken down across staff or classmates. Same thing with this. This is another example. Just wanted to give you all context, so you're not just taking my word for it. And I'm sure some of you, hopefully all of you, have had a chance to look through some of this data. All right, so one of the questions that we asked a COVID question, because when we were doing our preliminary interviews with folks in your community, they did bring up COVID a lot, right? So we wanted to make sure that we had a question in the actual survey that talked about what people's perspectives of how the school handled COVID. The community believed that the Lebanon School District successfully handled COVID. 90% of parents and families agree or strongly agree. 84% of employees agree or strongly agree. 78% of middle school students agree or strongly agree. So when we say middle school students, we're saying 7th and 8th. 70% of high school students agree or strongly agree that the school district successfully handled COVID. Now, I'm going to move on to areas of reflection and improvement. So I wanted to highlight, the key findings to celebrate, hopefully continue to maintain as you think about your, where you go as a district. But there's also areas that need to be delve in a little bit more in order to figure out what kind of changes and improvement you all need to make. So areas of reflection and improvement. So what we did, we took some of the data and the information that we received, and we wanted to give some context at a high level, and then we'll give some examples. So the first one, under diversity. There was a strong emphasis around prevent acts of discrimination, prejudice, and racism. Focus on building understanding and capacity district-wide. 54% of employees agree or strongly agree injustice, prejudice, and discrimination happen towards groups that are underrepresented within the schools. 51% of 7th and 8th graders state that they either sometimes or rarely seek opportunities to stand up positively for those who are underrepresented when they're treated negatively at the school. 43% of parents and families agree or strongly agree that injustice, prejudice, and discrimination happens towards groups that identify with different diversity characteristics at their schools, at their students' schools. 42% of high school students stated they have witnessed or experienced acts of discrimination, prejudice, and racism based on the various diversity representation at the school. So that was under the category of diversity. Now I'm going to move into equity. So from the high level summary, to ensure that the schools are an emotionally safe environment for staff, members, and students. And here are the data reflecting that. 70% of high school students feel that students have the least amount of power in the school district. 73% of district employees agree or strongly agree they feel acknowledged for their work by the SAU office. 50% of parents, families feel that students have the least power within the power struggle of the school district. 58% of 7th and 8th graders agree or strongly agree that discipline is fairly applied. Last but not least is our consolidated data around inclusion. In terms of improvement and areas of focus, it's important to be able to create an environment where students feel comfortable talking about their sense of belonging with teachers, administrators, staff members, with teachers and administrators. And then the second part of that was staff members would appreciate more opportunities to participate in the decision-making process at the SAU and school level. So those are two different buckets. as part of the consolidated information for inclusion. 55% of 7th and 8th graders agree or strongly agree they're comfortable talking about issues concerning their sense of belonging with teachers. 49% of employees seek opportunities to advocate positively for those who are underrepresented. Over 40% of high school students selected ethnicity, nationality, and gender as needing more representation in various roles within the school. So as part of this information that was put together, I wanted to make sure that we've given you all an opportunity to kind of see from looking at all the different individual surveys where there were kind of high-level themes across, in order to give you all an opportunity to really figure out what's the lay of the land currently. And with data, it's a starting point. It doesn't mean that it's a be-all, end-all. So I want to stop and throw it to you all if you have any questions for me.
Anyone has any questions, comments? Stick your hand up and we'll try to keep this orderly and let Deo answer questions one at a time. Stephen.
First of all, thank you for reviewing that information. I guess one of my questions is, I recognize there probably aren't national benchmarks for what this data might look like elsewhere, but I'm curious in the other schools in which you've worked or run similar surveys, how some of our numbers compare. Like, you mentioned an area of, to celebrate is that 74% of district employees agree that leadership will listen to them and bring changes, or 76% of high school students feel the same. But you could also say, well, there's 1 in 4 that don't feel that. And so how does that compare to what you've seen elsewhere?
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's Steve, right? Correct? Well, so everyone always asks me this, and I try to be very cautious. I'm not trying to compare data from one place to another, especially where these set of questions was unique to your community. I think the opportunity is, as you all think about next step, to be able to figure out what's a number that's good. What makes sense here for you all as you think about where you want to be with the data that's presented. So I don't compare data with other schools, unfortunately.
Kristen? No. Oh, sorry. Sorry,
That's okay.
Renee, I should need to look to the right.
No, you're good, you're good. I'm just curious, the wording power struggle, is that how it was written in the question to the families? So 50% of the parents and families feel that students have the least power within the power struggle of the school district. I'm a little bit, it seems a little kind of awkward wording, and I'm just wondering if that's how it was worded to them, and if so, what is intended by power struggle?
Yeah, so I'm going to be frank and open and honest with you all. This question had a lot of pushback when people started looking at some of the questions that were put together. We wanted to reflect some of the information that we received when we were doing the preliminary interviews with your community. And there were several times where the word power struggle came up. So we included that in the survey questions to see what, from a macro standpoint, how people feel about it. Because that word power really is about equity when you think about what people feel in terms of their agency within the community to contribute, provide feedback, participate, engage. But that word power struggle came specifically from the folks that we had those preliminary conversations with.
Thank you.
Miles. Dale, our student rep, Miles Sturgis, has a question.
Hey, Miles.
So I guess more so than a question, this is a comment, but I think what Stephen said is important, and even though some of the percentages are high, is it really enough? Like, I think it was 74%. I don't think that's enough, but that's something to know. And with what Renee said about the wording of many questions, council agrees. We made some suggestions in the preliminary draft of the equity audit. Not all of those changes were seen. I took the equity survey. And other students agree with me that there were still many questions similar to what you pointed out that weren't very well worded. They were confusing. Even, I mean, I had viewed the preliminary draft, and I still didn't really understand what some of the questions were asking. So I think a lot of students put a random answer. They didn't understand the question. Some of the answer choices didn't always make sense. And some questions sort of implied that there were things that there may not be. I think there was one about, I think it was power struggles between like different positions within the school. That just implies that there wasn't an option to say, I don't think there is one. And I think that's an oversight that really should be noted. And council certainly isn't trying to undermine the equity audit. We think it's a great thing, and it's wonderful that the school district is performed the equity audit, but caution the board in the interpretation of some of the results. A lot of the results are certainly very valid, and some are probably not far off, but we think they're not necessarily exactly correct.
Miles, thank you for your feedback. So I want to highlight two things. The first one is in each of the stakeholder surveys results. So for example, the high school one or middle school, we provided even the consolidated written words that people provided within the fill in the blank areas. So again, there's not a perfect survey out there. What we did is we came along your community and did those preliminary conversation in order to see where things were. And we were able to integrate questions that we saw or themes and questions that appeared several times. But I would strongly encourage you all to be able to look through the individual data for each of the stakeholders, especially the last pages of those summaries where we went in and manually counted the themes that we heard around certain phrases and words where people had the opportunity to type in things. So I would really encourage you all to be able to look at that. The other one is in terms of the feedback that we received from the students. First of all, I just want to say I appreciate everyone that participated in this particular, in every aspect of this journey. We wanted to make sure that we came alongside your community, that we heard people's feedback and perspectives and point of views. So we tried to make sure that it represented that. But the reality is we were not going to include every single recommendation that every stakeholder groups provided. So I think it's the opportunities for you all to be able to dig through the data, look through them, and where there's curiosity to analyze it, right? To see what is the lay of the land, right? In terms of some of the data points that came back. This should be a starting point. And the other thing to keep in mind is also, this is the first time you all have ever done this, right? The first time I looked at the survey that you all were trying to put together the first time, those survey questions were very generic. It had no context to your specific community. So anyways, I just want to repeat and say, we really, my team and I had close to 4 people on my team that worked on this project with me, and we appreciated everyone that provided feedback. And I'm sorry that certain things were not included that different stakeholders asked, or the way that some stuff were worded.
Can I respond?
Yeah, sure, go.
Thank you, Derry. I appreciate that. And it's definitely important that people responding to the survey were able to submit written responses as well, explaining some of their choices. But I think regardless, it was still a bit disappointing. Not necessarily that some of the changes we recommended weren't included, because obviously not all changes from recommendations from everyone will be included, but there were definitely questions that were confusing and made some people take the survey as kind of a joke, which it should not be taken as, but given how much work was put into the different drafts of the audit, it was still kind of shocking on just some of it seemed oversights on some of the questions.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you, Miles.
Renee, you had another point?
I was just curious, in many different data survey type things that I've seen, I don't see a lot of options to skip questions, but I noticed in the questions that there were a significant amount of skipped opportunities, especially by employees. And I'm just wondering if that's something that you frequently see. Like, I'm just looking at, question 21 on the employee one, 113 skipped it and only 107 answered it. And that's a little bit concerning, because then the data is so skewed that how do we really interpret what's being put in front of us?
Yeah, Renee, thank you for that question. I think part of the entire experience is a good thing to evaluate, right? Why do people not feel, why do people skip some questions? Was it that they didn't understand the question, or did they not feel comfortable sharing the question? With the equity surveys that we create, we have a data researcher that creates the survey for us, and we always want to make sure that there's options for people to skip. Because if people are not given an option to skip, then you're forcing people to provide an answer where they might not know or feel comfortable providing an answer. So that's why we had those options. With certain questions, you see that there was a higher participation, and there were certain questions where you saw a little bit more, a higher number of people that skipped. But I think when you think about some of the next step, I do think that might be an opportunity, depending on what the next steps are for your community, to figure out why did people skip some of the questions, and figure out what drove that.
Yeah, it seems like some of the tender topics. Yeah, the harder questions were the ones that were skipped, and I feel like from a board's perspective, those are the ones we really need to know, right? And where are we meeting our goals and we're not, so it's a little unfortunate.
Yeah, I would definitely, Renee, I will encourage to definitely look at some of those written feedback, the written comments. I think it gives some context there, because some people were very frank and open to say, hey, I don't feel comfortable answering this, or here's my experience, or here's. So yeah, we see that often when we do this for the first time with different community. Sometimes there's a lot of people are skeptic. People are scared that there might be negative repercussion back to them, even though there's no identifying information. So there's a bunch of factors that contribute to that. But there were some questions where there was a higher number of skips.
Thank you.
Lil is next.
And Deo, you alluded to this just now a little bit too, and you alluded to it in some of the other meetings that we had, that often the first time that people do a survey like this, there's a lower response rate, or there's a lower participation rate, because it's sort of the first time anyone's ever kind of grappled with some of these questions. And I guess my question is, especially in light of the fact that so few families filled out the survey, like of all of the groups, that was the lowest group. Do you do follow-up surveys, or do we now, since this survey was created in our context, do we now as a district own this survey, and can we do it again, I guess, to sort of get more information going forward, or the second time we do it, is it better? I mean, how are we measuring how we're doing if we can continue on and make changes, I guess is my question.
Yeah, that's a very, very good statement and very good questions and remark that you bring up. I think you have to think about one, what's the next step? Do you continue to engage with the broader community to see some of the perspective and point of views that people had in general? And then what are certain things that you can do that you feel that will contribute positively in terms of positive changes? And then you figure out what the frequency of conducting the survey again looks like, right? And that's really where you can compare data over time to see, hey, this is how people reacted the first time, and this is how people answered the second time. But again, I think it's really important to keep in mind that these are not typical questions that are asked from people, but also from a macro way. So it takes time. It takes time for people to see what the intention is and what you're trying to get to. But I would definitely encourage you, when you think about what the next steps will be, to think about how do you continue to do this with a certain version that's still grounded by the core question, so you can see over time if you've made a difference, right? Especially if you put solutions in place that's addressing some of these areas where it might need some improvement.
Thank you.
A few things I would like to mention about the survey tool that is also unique is that Deo and his team feel strongly that a no opinion or an NA or a middle is not part of a survey. So that you had to choose within the question, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. Or skip. So that isn't a negative or positive, it's just that was unique. We asked that as administrators. We're used to seeing that kind of middle option, and that isn't part of the survey. We will be, as a leadership team, we're getting this data alongside all of you. We're going to be developing our next 3-year strategic plan. So we're going to continue to work with DEO on some of these targeted areas and see how we can put goals into the next three-year strategic plan, because we want to really use this data and not just say we did the survey and didn't follow up on it. So if you're wondering what are our next steps, those will be the next steps in the process.
Anyone else? Miles, you have your hand up again.
While Miles walks up here, can I just ask, did we miss a piece in terms of the written responses that people
I
had?
was going to ask Dale
Because I don't see any of those.
I'll ask him to resend the links and I'll get them.
Thank
back
you.
out. Thank you.
Go ahead, Miles.
Thank you. Another thing I wanted to comment on is something I've commented on before at a prior board meeting, but the new board members were not elected at that point. So I want to say it again, and it's important. Somewhere in the process of revisions to the survey, council wrote a statement and passed, and we sent that to Dr. Roberts and to DEO, and that statement was supporting that sexual orientation would be included, and certainly sexual orientation was included on the survey, and we were assured by DEO and Dr. Roberts that that would happen, but there were questions that did not include that, such as, please select, at least in the high school survey, such as, please select the areas you see diversity traits in the teachers and staff at your school. Sexual orientation was not included as an answered choice for this question, and it seems like an important question to have that answered choice for. Additionally, a note about transgender. When it was listed as an example of sexuality, it was notated as transgendered instead of transgender, which is offensive to a lot of the transgender community. It's just not appropriate language and not modernly acceptable. So in a survey about diversity, inclusion, and equity, it's alarming to see things like that and large oversights like that. And I've been doing a lot of critique tonight, but council definitely does support the fact that the equity audit was conducted, but again, thinks there were many oversights.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miles, for your feedback. I believe the first time when the council brought those concerns up, we addressed it on an email to everyone. So we took full ownership of the spelling mistake that was added on the ED on transgender.
Other questions?
Dale, I provided the slide presentations and overview. I'm just checking with you as I look through. When we're looking at the high school student survey, if you flip through that, that does have some of the key things. So question 3, please explain when or why you feel a sense of belonging. It says answered skipped, but what they did was they went in and they measured the number of times an individual student mentioned the word friends, and that's where the count 107 is coming from. So I will connect with you on Friday. I think we're meeting Deo, and I'll just triple check that I'm getting out all the information that we wanted to, because there's just a lot of information that we've shared. So if that's okay with you, I'll check in with you on Friday about that.
Yeah, I think that's
Thank you.
it feels kind of unfortunate people didn't get to see those data, because there's a lot of substantive data under those each individual surveys where you actually get a chance to see where we saw certain words come up frequently.
Yeah, that is in here. It's the ones that say, like, question 19, please provide examples of what advocacy looks like. 50 people said standing up for someone, 30 speaking up out. That information is in the packet, just so you know. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Dale. We, as you mentioned, we need to do a deeper dive into this data. I think we're we're certainly going to make good use of it and let the real work begin. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for allowing my team and I to work with you on this first half of the starting point, and I look forward to continuing to work with you all in the next step. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Be the host, please, Dale? Thank you.
Yes, I will make sure to do that before I
Have a
leave.
good night.
All right, let me see. Make host. Perfect. See, Dr. Roberts, are you the host now?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, super. See you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Moving on to unfinished business, we have a small number of second read on policies to do, and we'll go through those. I think we can go through them pretty quickly in the interest of keeping things moving. Kristen, could you move that we accept each of these in turn as the head of policy?
Should I read them each one, or, I mean, the numbers?
I can introduce them, and if you would just move that they be accepted by the board, and then maybe between the three of us, we can give any context that's needed. So the first item is second read of policy EBCG, communicable and infectious diseases.
I'd like to make a motion to, sorry? To adopt policy EBCG, communicable and infectious diseases.
Moved by Kristen, second by MJ.
I have things. Surprise, surprise. So there's a bunch of the little grammar things. So I think Joanna and I did this last time where I corrected all the little grammar stuff and gave you the corrected copy. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So the only thing I have are some actual just substantive questions in this particular policy. So under 2B2C, so procedures when communicable disease is suspected, and it goes through under B2 is the response. So first the parent is contacted, then under B, the employee healthcare agent is thing, and then under C, it says notify and consult with the healthcare professionals knowledgeable about the particular disease, and I think that is supposed to be that the nurse or the designee is supposed to be notifying and consulting, but it doesn't specify who's supposed to be doing that. 2C, B2C.
Well,
So before that, under B, it specifically says that the nurse will contact the person who is either the guardian or the healthcare agent, and the nurse/superintendent designee will attempt to do that. And then in C, it just doesn't specify. I think it's the same thing, it's just not specifying who the person is. So I think it's still supposed to be nurse/superintendent's designee. Does that make sense, Joanne?
Instead of the healthcare professionals?
No, they're consulting with the healthcare professional. Someone is supposed to notify and consult with, so that I'm asking who is the person who's supposed to notify and consult with the healthcare professional? And I think it's supposed to be the superintendent designee or the nurse.
Well,
I think that's up in the beginning of
right.
I think that's up in the beginning of the paragraph when it starts, in all cases in which the school nurse or other person designated becomes aware
Right,
of the student.
but
So I think that's implied as you
So
go
I
down.
agree. I think it's implied, except that it's specified in A and B, and it's not specified in C. So I just, for the purposes of being clarity, because it doesn't, it's saying somebody's going to do that, it's just important to specify who that somebody is. But you can decide or not to do that. And then the last question I have on that one is under, it's on the very last page. Sorry. No, not the last page. Sorry. Right above 3, I can't even figure out what number we're looking at. It says, right above where it says practices to minimize contamination in schools, so the paragraph right above that. These provisions are intended to complement, not replace, any provisions of the board policy, pandemic, epidemic, emergencies. Don't we normally put in the policy number there? It just says the title. It doesn't have the designation of the policy.
Which one are you, what page are you?
Sorry, I'm on page 4,
Okay. Which section?
right above,
Section 3.
right, well,
Testing social distancing.
333, I.
And where are you suggesting we add,
The
any provisions
italicized.
of board policy?
And then it says, yeah, pandemic, epidemic emergencies, don't we normally include the board policy
Yeah.
reference there? Yeah, and that's the only one for that one.
Yep, and we have policy meeting tomorrow morning, so I'll go over this with the
Yeah.
members of policy tomorrow and make sure that we're all on the same page.
Oh, sorry, there's one more on the last page, I just realized. Implementation, page 6, number 6. Are you there?
Yep.
The superintendent is authorized to implement this policy through and procedures. Through what and procedures? Policies and procedures, maybe? I don't know what that's, there's a
I'm
missing
thinking
word.
It's supposed to be N-E, A-N-Y.
Through any it could be, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
either
I
missing
think
a
that's
word
right.
or it's supposed to be
Yeah, I
any
think it is.
procedures.
May implement this policy through any procedures
Yeah.
or administrative directives.
Okay, so any instead of and.
Yep, thank you.
That's it.
Okay.
Can I just make a comment? In the interest of diversity, inclusion, and such, we may want to be reviewing our policies to not utilize words such as she and he, because it's not inclusive of all, and I think the proper thing is to say they or something different, but while we just did an diversity audit, I'd like to just put that out there.
So I did make that correction in here, actually, yes, change the language to themself instead of she or he.
And I'll remind my assistant, because we had made that agreement
Okay.
going forward, so I'd be happy to do a reminder of that, but thank you for mentioning it.
Anything else on EBCG? All in favor? Unanimous.
Okay, next policy?
Okay, now, moving down to, sorry,
The long one.
EEAEA.
Yep.
We call this the Old McDonald policy.
Absolutely. All right, I'd like to make,
Drug and alcohol testing, school bus drivers and contracted carriers.
right, I'd like to make a motion to adopt policy EEAEA, mandatory drug and alcohol testing, school bus drivers and contracted carriers. Pardon? As revised.
I'll second.
Oh, should I lump that together with EEAEA-R?
Yes, let's do those together.
Do those together. And additionally, to adopt EEAEA-R, drug and alcohol testing for school bus and commercial vehicle drivers, revised.
I'll second.
Still seconding.
Corrections, questions?
Just one major one for me. On page 2 of EEAEAR, so the revised one, the new portion in yellow, under random alcohol and drug tests. Okay, so the second sentence says, the number of random tests annually based upon the average number of driver positions must equal the greater of the respective rates determined annually by the United States Department of Transportation, or 15% for alcohol and 50% for drugs, maybe, drugs? Okay, so I think it's probably drugs, but we should probably specify.
Must be, right?
Right, it must be. I think it has to be drugs, but,
Well, since it's entitled alcohol
and
and drugs.
drugs,
yeah.
right? That was the biggest glaring one of that one.
Anything else? All in favor? Unanimous. Next is policy GBGA, staff health revised.
I would like to make a motion that policy GBGA, staff health revised, be adopted.
Second.
Questions, corrections, comments?
this is just a question. Under 3, Roman numeral 3, why is there a blank? Are we supposed to specify who is responsible for this? It says the blank.
Yeah, we usually have a selection. Tim, would this fall under HR?
According to our notes from Policy Committee, we said that it would read Human Resources Coordinator / BA.
Okay,
At least that's what I had.
that's what we do now, so that's good.
All right, so we just need to take out submit superintendent and et cetera, and just specify those.
Okay. All in favor? Unanimous. Policy JLCA, physical examination of students, new policy.
This is the second reading, yeah. I would like to make a motion to adopt policy JLCA, physical examination of students, a new policy.
I'll second.
Are there any corrections to this new policy?
Yes. Just a couple. Okay, so under A, second paragraph, parents of students transferring to the district must present documentation evidencing of meeting the physical examination requirement. So what do they have to present? They have to present documentation they have met the physical examination requirement. Is that what that's trying to say? So documentation they have met. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. And then under D, the second sentence, if the parents fail or neglect to have said child so examined, this is examined by another doctor, and fail to present the recommendations from said examiner within a reasonable period after the referral by the school, then said child may be examined by a qualified healthcare provider. I assume that we mean qualified healthcare provider stipulated by the school. Is that what we're saying? Because they've opted not to have them examined by their own private healthcare provider, but we're saying they have to be, and then are we providing that healthcare provider?
I don't think so, just to jump in from our discussions, I don't know if we want to tell people what healthcare provider they're allowed to use.
Right, so then what does the sentence mean? If we're not, like, why?
Well, a qualified healthcare provider,
But we just told, what this says is, we've referred to, the school has said that this child needs to be examined by an appropriate practitioner. And then if the parents fail to do that, then said child may be examined by a qualified healthcare provider at school? Or, what is that? I don't understand what that means.
I don't know if we need to answer that question specifically. I don't know, Joanne, what do you think?
Yeah, have the nurses look at it. I'd be happy to ask them what that means to them.
Yeah,
Because
because
the
for
next
me as a
step is
parent,
significant.
if I say I'm not doing it, then who's gonna do it?
Well, then the other thing is, it's how do you define significant, and the matter gets reported to DCYF, which is a big step.
Right, and so
that's
huge
why
step, yeah.
I just want to ask the nurses.
yeah, it just
how
feels
they
like
go.
it's leaving us open for something inadvertently. So that's why I just want to clarify what we mean by that and what those actual steps are, because there is a big jump between, we asked you to go get a person examined and you didn't, and now you have to go to DCYF. So,
I agree, there's something missing.
yes, it feels like there's a step missing, and I don't know what the step is because I don't know what we normally do.
Okay.
Is this significant enough to hold this up, or should this be something that can be corrected clerically?
I think it's a significant,
Especially when we're
it's a
involved in
significant
DCYF.
direction that this could go in.
Let's table this then until the next meeting and bump it back to policy. Okay, so we will not vote on that. Policy JLCG, exclusion of students who present a hazard.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to adopt policy JLCG, a new policy, exclusion of students who present a hazard.
I'll second.
start on the end. Go ahead, Lisa. Batter up.
Go ahead.
You're first.
Do I say yes?
No.
No, I thought you were, I was asking for questions.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Stephen?
Am I correct in assuming that perhaps this policy is a copy or a sample of what the School Board Association policy is?
That's correct.
So should the top say sample policy?
No, when she goes to clear up the template, she would take that out.
Because that didn't appear in any of the other
Yeah,
new policies.
I'll put an
Yeah.
asterisk next to it. Thank you.
If we
Renee.
can just change the language again, there's a lot of he, she, him, her.
Lil?
No, that was my only thing, was the language of the he, she.
Thanks. Okay, all in favor? Unanimous. That takes care of the second read of policies, and we will revisit JLCA at the next meeting.
We need to go back to do board committees, which was up under new business.
We already did that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Superintendent update.
So I was in communication with Kidcentric, which is our testing regarding contact information, just making sure it was up to date. At Mount Leb, I've had several meetings and communications, both email and in person, with Dana Tim, Marinese Architects, ECMAN members, Katie Roach, City Fire and Planning Code Department members, to discuss the projects and ensure we're on the same page. And we did a walkthrough of the building this week. At Hanover Street in the high school, Marinese Architects will be coming over April break to walk through Hanover Street and the high school as they begin to finalize their design documents. This evening, we had the presentation by Deo, and we're going to be reviewing the survey data to look at goals that we should include in the next 3-year strategic plan. As far as the strategic plan, SALT members reviewed the current plan and began to talk about what to include in the next 3-year strategic plan. We'll bring the draft to the board for approval at the second meeting in May. The draft plan will be shared with parents and staff members prior to bringing it to the board for approval. And tomorrow, for SALT, we'll be working on emergency protocols with Homeland Security. There's some updates about finance and facilities. We'll be talking about the Mount Leb project, Seminary Hill, and the track. PNN, our first meeting date for Lebanon School District Secretaries Association has been scheduled, and Policy Committee will be meeting tomorrow. I held search committees for Director of Facilities and LMS principal positions. I invited Mrs. McIntyre to visit LMS. She met with student staff and held a meet and greet with staff and parents after school. I'll be reviewing applications for the social worker position next week. I met with Karen Woolsey, Director of Student Services, regarding Student Matter. I worked with Katie, Jack, and Tim to secure after-school childcare through the Immersion Montessori program. We're very fortunate. Met with Lisa Scalero to talk about the strategic plan and discuss the math committee's work in looking at our math program. Met with legal counsel and Tim to talk about the LSA and LAG negotiation schedule. And with Lori and Kate Freeland to update the website links. When we switched, there's a new version of Google, and we wouldn't have known it, but some of the links don't work. So if you happen to come across the link that doesn't work, just email me, and I'll get right on it and try to fix it. I followed up with Jack and Katie and let board members know about recess plans for the rest of the school year. Provided information regarding the area agreement and visiting exchange students. It looks like Plainfield has one exchange student for sure, and potentially a second. And per our area agreement, the first student's tuition is waived, but any students beyond that first student, their district, Grantham or Plainfield, pays for that tuition. I scheduled a meeting this Friday for city architects to come back to the SAU Seminary Hill for their design concept. They just wanted to walk through the building another time. And I've communicated with Sean Mulholland, the city manager, about city school matters, just to keep him up to date so that we're on the same page.
Questions for Joanne? Lil?
Joanne, I have a question about the process for the strategic plan.
Yeah.
Because I wonder, we talk about like what are the board roles, and so one of our roles is like setting the vision, right, for the district. And are board members involved earlier in the process of deciding on the strategic plan goals before we just get a full draft?
In the past, the board has been given the draft to provide feedback and input because it's pretty massive to try to go through it all. What I've always wanted to have the board do is the board to actually develop goals that are tangible and actionable. So the strategic plan that we put out is kind of our administrative and staff goals heading forward. But what are the board's goals with communicating to the community? What are you going to do a quarterly letter to update the community on what the board's doing? And things like that. So I see them melding together where the board's supporting the strategic plan and providing input as to the direction we should head. And then it would be great if the board had connections to the strategic plan and its own goals, so that when you do your annual review, it's not just, we met as a board X, Y, and Z, but did we meet our goals for that year? And I think communication is something that every school district consistently tries to improve upon in all areas. So that was our thinking. We're also on a tighter deadline because we thought we were going to get, and it's not Deo's fault, we wanted to take the time and do the equity audit well. We were thinking we would have all this data back in January. So I'm getting it back now with literally April break coming up, and two meetings with SALT to pull it together, inviting Deo to be part of those conversations at SALT. And that way I can bring the draft to the board in May and discuss it and describe it, because it is the end of that 3-year cycle.
Oh, thanks. I have one follow-up question. As part of the, and I don't think I remember seeing this in the last version like the last strategic plan review that we did. As part of the strategic plan, because it's something that we're thinking about for the next 3 years, right? Do we discuss the sort of financial ramifications of some of these plans? Because it is something that will then factor into how we do our budget going forward. And I know we have talked a lot about the facilities improvement plan and the financial ramifications of that, but I know we've referenced the technology improvement plan, and it came up during budget. Well, this is the year 3 of that technology improvement plan, and I was wondering if we've also sort of talked about what we anticipate, not obviously we can't guess, but what we anticipate some of those costs being over the 3 years.
Yeah, yes, good question, and we do. So, for example, I want to use ESSER funds to fund if we get a new math program. Our Envision Math is now 8 years old, so the version is kind of a dinosaur, and we started talking to teachers in the fall because that's a good example of like having teachers be part of the decision-making process. I certainly am not going to say this is the program you should use, but there's a lot of cost when you update a curriculum. So we are a framework, and so Tim and I have already been in conversation with Lisa, and what I wanted to do is use some of our ESSER funds, that 10%, to purchase the curriculum so then it's not coming out of the budget as a huge hit. And then Lisa could say, oh, every year for supplies, you're going to need to do X amount. And we talked about the ARC program and the cost for that. And then we purchased the first round, but then Lisa was able to say, here's the cost for the future rounds. So I also have plans for Pete to come in to talk to the board before the budget cycle, because it's been a while since Pete talked about his plan for technology. We just went through the pandemic and we purchased a lot of things. So that's something that I've already let Pete know, and he's happy to come in the fall and talk about it. But I definitely agree, like looking at the cost over time should be part of the conversation with where we're heading as a district. So that's a really good point.
Anyone else have anything? Because I had a couple things to ask.
I just have
Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
one tiny question, because you talked about updating the website and, to let you know, I'm just wondering, do we have a person who's sort of in charge of that kind of public-facing, the website, not just the district, but the schools? I don't know if they're all one huge website with subcomponents, or if each school has some control, but yeah, is that
Pete Freeland has kind of the Google applications control oversight of all of the pages. Diane Estes is responsible for the SAU page that you click on and keeping that up to date. And then the schools have responsibility for their individual sites on the schools. And so we now have it that at least when Diane updates something on the SAU, she's not going into 4 different schools. It's now set up that it gets posted on those schools. But as the Director of School and Community Relations, it's a combination between Kate and what it graphically looks like through the company, that we pay, and also Diane is the Director of School and Community Relations. Which is interesting, because in the last couple of interviews, and Richard, you were there, it was pointed out that people really liked that they were able to find things on the website, and found that it was more clear. So if there's specific things that people would like to see changed, just let me know, and we can look at what that means, because we do try to keep ours up to date as best as we can.
You say you're going to be reviewing applications for the social worker position?
Yes,
How they look so far?
I haven't been in there. I've been focused on the other positions.
Okay. And Sean Mulholland is coming to the next board meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
April 27th, I believe.
Yep. Thank you. Anything else for Joanne?
Thank you.
Thank you. Tim, BA update.
Just a few small things. At your place, you should have an audit. If you do not have an audit report, let me know, but I think I put one everywhere. That's for last fiscal year ending June 30th. For new members, books close June 30th. We spend the summer getting all set, getting all the final journal entries. I have to file a report with the state as of September 1st that is used to set the tax rate. And then we usually get audited around the last week in September, first week in October, somewhere in there. It does take, and I've had this about a month, but I think it's about a month. I could have given to you last board meeting, but I think I wanted to wait till the election cleared. So it usually takes 6 months is my point, to get 5 to 6 months to get the report out. So it's looking back to last fiscal year. There's a lot of information in there that may or may not interest you, but I try to give you a report every year. There's a management discussion and analysis in the front. That's kind of a summary if you're looking for a place to just kind of sum it up. There's a letter that the auditors put out, and I just wanted to, there's 3 findings. So we talk about a finding. You won't find it written in there anywhere, but there's 3 things they put in the letter that they feel need to be addressed. One is the deputy treasurer, which is a repeat comment. They put repeat comment, means I told you about it last year. So in the opinion of the auditors, the board should appoint a deputy treasurer. The treasurer is an elected position. We've had one for years. We've never had a deputy treasurer as far as I know, but last year they said, you should have a deputy treasurer. And I think I mentioned it once, but so they put it on here again. So they find it significant enough that the board should think about getting a deputy treasurer. I don't know how you go about doing that. It's appointed, but I don't have any ideas or suggestions or who would want to do such a job. They don't do anything unless the treasurer can't fulfill her duties. So I'm telling you because they told me. And then the 2 other findings were there were two new hires last year that they didn't have. They check everything, including new hire paperwork, and make sure everything's all done. So last year there were 2 new hires that didn't have NHRS retirement forms filled out. Of course, we rectified that. That won't be on there again. Last year besides being COVID, we had a transition of staff at the HR department, so I'm confident that won't happen again. And the last one was there was some deposits. So everybody has to deposit the money they get regularly. And the student activity funds, they had a finding that there were some deposits that weren't made timely. Like, they don't like you holding things over a weekend. So, and specifically, they got them on a Friday, deposited them on a Monday. That's not a good idea. So we've hopefully cleared that up. We've talked with the people who get the money for student activities. And hopefully that's it. So that was the 3 findings. I think it was pretty, you should feel good that those are pretty good. It's a small number and pretty minor things. But the deputy treasurer issue, like, I wish I could give you some guidance, but they want you to appoint someone deputy treasurer. I don't know what happens if they say no. I'd say no if you tried to appoint me if I was, but.
Why don't we ask legal counsel since this came up twice so we can give the board direction?
Okay.
That'd be helpful.
That's it on that. The other thing I wanted to mention is food service. Last year, I started giving you warnings that we were going to be way over budget, and this year, it's a totally different story. So through February, We have revenues of $470,000 and expenses of $429,000. So the food service fund right now is almost $40,910, almost $41,000 in the black, and that's great. So that's good news. I just want to let you know that.
When will you give us that statement, Tim? The financial update?
The regular financial update will be at the end of the next board meeting. It's normally the first board meeting, but this one is a week earlier, and I couldn't get it done after the month to get it in the board packet in time, so.
This is a preview.
This is just on food service.
I have a food service question. I don't know if it's for you or Joanne, but just, so, one of you. I know pre-pandemic, like here at the middle school, there was choice, not a ton of choice, but there was some choice in what was available, and then we sort of went to these very regimented meals because of pandemic protocols. Is there any plan for when we're going to shift back to what cafeteria of yore was for kids?
Well, I know at Mount Leb, we need to maintain the bag lunch because the kitchen's going to be completely down for an entire year next year.
Right.
And I haven't discussed that with the principals or with Cafe Services. Have you, Tim?
No. So as we get closer to the end of the year, we'll have to fill out the applications for next year. And at that time, we have to indicate to the government whether we're going to do an offer or an offer versus serve, with basically choice or no choice. So once we have the discussion, if the middle school wants to go back to the regular serve, then we'll put the offer where you get choices, then we'll file that application accordingly. But we haven't talked about that yet.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Anything else for Tim? Okay, moving on. Committee updates. Finance and Facilities meets tomorrow afternoon. Policy meets tomorrow morning. EC meets Monday, April 18th, 4 p.m. at the SAU office. You all have your assignments. Personnel and Negotiations met Thursday, and we have a meeting scheduled in May, I think.
It's May 4th.
May 4th, thank you, with council. Student Wellness Advisory Committee next meets also on May 4th at the SAU. Hartford Area Career Technical Center next meets May 3rd at 10. Area Committee, May 24th. We're traveling to Grantham. It's an away game. Sorry. City School Joint Task Force next meets May 19th. And we'll talk more about that before that meeting occurs, about what's going to be discussed and what we want to go there with. The Track Fundraising Committee met yesterday here at the middle school. The committee is right now in the silent phase of raising money from significant donors. Number of those people have been identified. Different members of the committee are approaching folks. There are a number of grants out. We did get $25,000 from the Byrne Foundation that's been pledged, which is good. And there's a lot of other grant money that has been applied for. So that's where that stands. And plans are starting to be made now for broader engagement of the broader school community. And I know, I think there was some outreach to some of the PTO leaders, I think, I think there's plans to have some sort of joint meeting to talk about initiatives that can go across the schools. So things are perking along.
Dick?
Yes, Steve.
Is the fundraising at a point yet where someone who wants to donate can come forward and contact someone?
Yes. Yes.
Can we disseminate how they do that?
What about these?
Oh, great. That's a fast response.
I know.
There's money involved. I'm sorry I didn't bring, I only just grabbed a handful of these. I'll leave them on the table if anyone wants to take a look at them. These are the first run of flyers for the fundraising. And there's instructions on the back for how to make a gift.
That's great. Thank you.
So we'll leave these here. I'm sure we'll have to Aaron for financing facilities tomorrow.
Dick, you might want to just repeat that in your microphone.
First print of flyers has been made. I think we have a couple hundred of those, something like that. Instructions for, are on the back flap for how people can make donations. Now that's now active and live, so people can contribute to the fund. It's going through the Friends of Lebanon Recreation, and will then be funneled to the school district. People can make pledges, by the way, and pledges just need to be fulfilled by the end of the 2023 fiscal year, which for us is June 30th of 2023. So people who want to make a major gift and would like to break it up into a couple payments, that's also an option.
So they can make a credit card donation at the Friends of Lebanon Park and Rec
Yes,
website?
they can. They can send checks too.
Dick,
Yes,
sorry.
go ahead,
I
Lynn.
was just thinking, the middle school and Granite State track has just started this last week, so that might be a good idea to bring some of those to track practice in the next week or so, because all the parents who are there have kids who are interested in track.
Yep, make sure that those get, the box was just uncrated yesterday,
Oh,
so
perfect.
it's,
I have places for you to put it.
I'll mention to Brooke Herndon that we need to get those out. And I'd love to be able to have a second run. Anything else, any other questions about the track fundraising? Okay.
Is there an estimate when the work will begin? The actual physical work, not the committee work?
End of May, I think.
End of May.
Is it still?
Yeah, it's an, I don't have the exact date, but it's not an estimate, there's an actual, I think it's May 20th or something.
Does that impact any of the sports teams that might
It's
still be?
after the spring sports end, and the football team will have to play a couple of away games in the beginning of September, but it'll be done in time for them to have their full slate of home games.
Great.
So
And is this impacting graduation? I forget what we said.
graduation is going to be at a different spot.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it will do that. And the contracts have been, the contractor for the groundwork has been identified, contract signed, and for the track surface as well. Two different contractors.
Nice.
Yep, so that's progressing. Future agenda items, board member recommendations or questions? Lisa?
So it seems to me that the vote included us as a board discussing the SRO again. So we better put that on the list.
Yes, and the plan is we will get, we need to get some information from Sean Mulholland, and he'll be coming to the next meeting to talk to us about all the ramifications involved in maintaining or discontinuing the SRO.
So it's on the agenda.
It will be on the agenda for the next meeting. And I don't know whether, we'll have to decide whether it's going to be discussion and action at the next meeting, or if the next meeting will be discussion. We'll have to see how things look. But it'll at least be discussed, if not acted upon. Anything else? What am I forgetting? Important dates and announcements. Next school board meeting, Wednesday, April the 27th at 6:30 p.m. Any other business? Motion to adjourn will be entertained. Moved by Stephen. Second by Lil.